Hi, my name is Matthew Pejkovic from Matt's Movie Reviews, and here are 7 underrated horror movies that you can find now on Prime Video. First up, Daniel Isn't Real. Miles Robbins stars as Luke, an awkward college student who as a child conjured an imaginary friend named Daniel to deal with the trauma of witnessing a violent act. When Daniel convinces Luke to poison his mother, Daniel is banished, until years later when Luke brings Daniel, played by Patrick Schwarzenegger, back from exile. A highly imaginative and stylish dive into madness and seduction, Daniel Isn't Real takes known horror tropes and twists them into a unique and engrossing character-driven horror movie. Miles Robbins inhabits Luke with a palpable anxiety and disarming sensitivity, and Patrick Schwarzenegger counters with a turn full of confidence and sex appeal that masks a dark undertow that brings all kinds of hell with him. Next, The Wolf of Snow Hollow. The Wolf of Snow Hollow is set in a sleepy, snow-driven town that is on the edge after a series of grisly murders. Feeling the pressure is Deputy Sheriff John Marshall, played by Jim Cummings, who struggled to investigate the first homicide in the town in years, also has to deal with the ailing health of his father and town sheriff, played by Robert Forster, his wayward daughter, played by Chloe East, and his own crippling alcohol and anger issues. Successfully walking that tightrope between black comedy, grisly horror, and potent social commentary, The Wolf of Snow Hollow proves itself to be an innovative and entertaining addition to the werewolf subgenre. Jim Cummings hits that perfect note between awkward and earnest, while potent social commentary plays side by side to an equally engrossing murder mystery where a beast of monstrous strength has an insatiable lust for tearing bodies apart. Next is Deliver Us. Deliver Us tells the story of Sister Yulina, played by Maria Vera Ratti, a nun who claims immaculate conception when she gives birth to twin boys, one alleged to be the new coming of the Messiah and the other the Antichrist. Ordered to investigate by the Vatican is Father Fox, played by Lee Roy Coons, who uncovers a sinister conspiracy. Filmed on a limited budget, Deliver Us certainly does not feel like an independent feature, with directors Lee Roy Coons and Crew Ennis delivering an incredibly crafted horror feature that more than equals most major studio fare. While certain plot points in Deliver Us has previously been explored, there is a stern seriousness to the philosophical and theological supernatural world building of Deliver Us that increases the stakes of good versus evil. Next, Lord of Illusions. Scott Bakula stars in Lord of Illusions as Harry D'Amour, a private detective drawn to the supernatural who is hired to investigate the death of a famed illusionist, played by Kevin J. O'Connor, by his widow, played by Famke Jensen. A case that leads him to a deadly cult led by a sorcerer named Nyx, played by Daniel von Bargen. Famed horror writer Clive Barker's third directorial effort, Lord of Illusions melds neo-noir gumshoe mystery with supernatural horror thrills to create an engrossing crime horror mystery that is particularly memorable for Barker's brand of horror that is as queasy as it is scary. Next up, Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism. Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism stars Dan Ewing as Rob, a husband desperate to save his wife Lara, played by Georgia Ayers, from what he believes to be demonic possession. This leads to Bob turning to self-proclaimed exorcist and faith healer Daniel James King, played by Tim Pocock, whose brutal method of unsanctioned exorcism risks much more than Lara's soul. Loosely based on true events, Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism is not for the squeamish, with scenes of psychological and physical torture in the name of salvation hard for some to bear. Yet so terrific are the performances and vital the film's message of how faith can be exploited by snakes in sheep's clothing, Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism is a must-watch, especially for those tired of the same old exorcism song and dance. Next up is another Australian horror movie, Lake Mungo. A film about grief and revelation, Lake Mungo succeeds as both a portrait of a family in mourning in a chilling ghost story where even a simple photograph featuring a paranormal apparition can give chills. Gorgeously shot and impeccably acted, writer and director Joel Anderson uses the ever-popular mockumentary format and makes it his own, turning in a film that is incredibly frightening, yet anchored with an undeniable sense of humanity. Hollywood has long attempted a remake, but it will be hard-pressed to copy the sublime style, intimate horror, and heartfelt emotion found in Lake Mungo. Next, It Follows. Micah Monroe stars in It Follows as Jay, a young college student from the middle-class suburbs of Detroit whose one-night stand leads to contracting a curse in the form of a supernatural force that will stop at nothing to have its pound of flesh, if it catches up with you. Writer and director David Robert Mitchell does a great job in evoking that feeling of a surreal, supernatural force penetrating the real world, and thankfully does so without unnecessary exposition. Micah Monroe, meanwhile, brings a likeable naturalness to her role as an incredibly sympathetic figure caught in the tide of something large and sinister. We are invested in her survival, and like a great filmmaker should, Mitchell toys with our emotions throughout this high-stakes horror story. Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.